Hello and welcome.
Mom.
Oh, hi, just started a meeting. Thank you.
Oh.
Okay, bye.
Whoopsie.
The first interruption happened 30 seconds in. That's what happens when I have meetings at my house. Hi, I can't guarantee my cat won't make an appearance either. So all right, I'm gonna wait just a second here.
1 second, Mama.
I'm gonna try. Of course, now I'm not used to Zooming anymore. I had a poll. Let me see if it launches in the chat here. Can you guys see a poll? Anything pop up yet? So if you can just kind of give us a little bit of feedback, how are you feeling about how your child's been progressing this year? And I did kind of 1 as like a low end, like, we could use some more supports, or 5, like things are going amazing. This is great. We're still in a pandemic, but things are awesome. All right. I see lots of 4s and 5s. All right, let me check my waiting room here. I don't think I have the actual chat turned on, just because I wasn't sure if I would have anybody able to monitor the chat tonight. So I think I turned off that setting, but just so you guys know, thank you for that. This meeting is being recorded so that I can go ahead and upload it to my YouTube channel later for parents that were unable to make it. So it will be on there later. Thank you guys so much for coming. I was trying to pick a time in here when we could do it that might be somewhat decent post dinner and maybe before bedtimes or around bedtimes, when we could all try to get a little bit of quiet. So, well, welcome again. So this is a meeting I've done the past couple years every January, just to try and touch base and give people some idea of, kind of what's expected for the remainder of the year. We'll talk a little bit about how NWEA went. We'll talk about some individualized reading plans that Dearborn has called the DIREPs. And then if there's time at the end, we should be able to talk a little bit about report cards. So with that, I will go ahead and begin. I'm like that person. Hold on a minute. Let me share my screen. Oh, that everybody makes fun of on the internet. Let me see here. There we go. Please tell me you can see my screen here.
I did see it. There was something.
No, like all over the place. I lost my ability to see you guys. Okay, now it says stop share. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is ridiculous. Where is my Zoom? There's my Zoom. Oh, I swear I was better at this last year. I got too used to it. Yeah. Hold on, let me try again. In case you guys didn't see, they declared March 1st a virtual day. If you haven't seen that, this is a little sign of how it'll probably go for most of us that day. Good times. All right, let me try again. All right, how's that? Are we back?
Yes, I see it.
All right, perfect. All right, so we went ahead and did our quick poll there on how you're feeling about your child's learning this year. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of start with the basics of what do the reading levels look like. So at the beginning of the year, the kids are still learning, their letters, their sounds, all these things. We're starting to learn how to read pictures in a book. This is an example here. If you can see these kind of the tiny pictures up in the corner there of what does reading look like when we're at a level 1, because you're going to hear the teachers talk about text levels, all the way through 5th grade. So we want to kind of give you some idea of what these levels look like at each number. So at the beginning of the year, some kids are reading level 1 books now. It's a very predictable pattern. Okay. The pattern of the text is generally in one line. The pattern repeats over and over again with maybe only one simple word change. Kids who are reading at this level generally can recognize where a period is. They're looking at words and seeing their space between words. They can touch each word as they're reading. They're using the picture for a heavy amount of support. Kids who are learning at level 1 are able to do matching games. They can match their uppercase and lowercase letters. They would be able to look at a text like that and kind of identify which letters were uppercase and which were lowercase within that sentence. And they're also able to turn the pages independently. All right, so this is kind of where most of the kids were in the fall. They're also able to read our ABC chart and practice using beginning sounds. Now, this next text level, level 2, is kind of where a lot of our kids are right now. And this is very typical. This is kind of what's considered grade level in the middle of kindergarten. So level 2 still has a lot of repetitive text on every page. So it's following a pattern, a little bit of an increase in words, still heavy on the picture support. But a lot of times on a page or two, there may be a small pattern change. So if you can kind of see in the examples I have up there, whoops, on the screen, is that, you know, it says I can see a purple towel, and then the pattern changes just a little bit to see if the child's paying attention to the print, and it throws in that word and. So as your child is pointing and reading, we do expect them to notice that that page no longer says I can. It starts with the word and. And I noticed a lot of my students, that's really where they got tripped up in this last round of DRAs. You know, when we're doing the actual assessments, you know, we're not allowed to prompt them to back up and reread. If we were reading with them in a group at that time, you know, we would go back and model how that pattern has changed. We're still typically on one line of print. They're still going to be pointing one-to-one matching as they're reading. So what they're saying out of their mouth should match where they're pointing in the book. One thing that I always tell the kids over and over again is look at the picture, look at the picture, look at the picture. So if at home, when you're reading books, if you are covering up that picture, I'm going to ask you to please stop doing that. One of the things we teach them is to look at the picture and look at the beginning letter of the word, because that can actually help you a lot. So not everything we teach them is based on stretching out and sounding out the word. Sometimes you can look right at that picture there of that towel, and instead of saying blanket, you're going to say towel because you see the T in the picture. Children at this level are generally recognizing more punctuation marks. So question mark, some kids are starting to recognize comma or even quotation marks, exclamation marks, and they typically know about 15, maybe 12 to 15-ish sight words kind of on their own and in print. Now, the levels 3 and 4 are where we want to move for the remainder of the school year. So typically now we're going to kind of see a bigger jump in what that text is going to look like. So definitely an increased number of words on the page. Okay, instead of just one line of print, they're going to do that return sweep where there's going to be 2 lines on the page, sometimes 3. The text is still somewhat repetitive. But there might be subtle changes here and there. And I gave an example on there of, you know, instead of saying mom said, it might switch to say said mom. And again, we're looking to see if your child is recognizing that that pattern has changed. This is where we start prompting more for story events and details. So at the end of the story, we're starting to ask them questions, asking them to tell us, you know, what the story was about, who the characters were, where it was taking place. Was there a problem that was fixed in the story? Kids here generally know 20-ish or more sight words kind of in isolation. When they are problem solving a word, they're still able to look at the picture because the picture is still there for support, but you can tell by looking at that picture, there's more things going on in the picture now. So instead of having, say, a big red ball where the text says, I see a red ball, you know, we're getting a little more complicated in the fact that there's other distractors in the picture. So the child's learning where to focus on the picture when they want help with that word. Other things we're teaching them is when it doesn't sound right, you're going to back up to the beginning of your sentence and you're going to touch and reread it again and see if it makes sense when you're reading. Generally, kids at this level are still using their finger to point. I don't so much harp on removing that finger just yet, actually in any of the kindergarten levels, simply because that's a good marker when they're trying to go and stretch out a word or look for word patterns. I like them to have their finger right on there. Also, so I can kind of see what they're looking at when they're trying to problem solve. When they're reading out loud, they're generally reading in kind of some phrased type reading. So this text, says, look at me. So at the beginning, we're hearing a lot of look at me, because they're very focused on getting those words correct. And in this level text, you might start hearing them read words a little bit more together. Look at me, said the girl. I can slide. So we're starting to hear it a little more phrased like an author. Level 4 is ideally where we would love to see everybody at the end of the year. That's really our goal for everybody into kindergarten. And you can tell just by looking at that picture up there that that's a pretty decent jump, especially compared to the level 1 text that we showed first. So we have multiple lines of text. We're going across 2 pages of text. Lots of somewhat distracting things in the picture. So they do have to kind of look and figure out where the focus is in that picture. Students at this level can generally retell, and they retell the story mostly in order. So like even when I'm with my kids, just today I was meeting with a group and I asked them to kind of tell me what was happening in the story. And right away they started with the last thing that happened in the book. So that's another skill that we work on. So when you're retelling, you want to start at the beginning, pretend that the person hasn't read the story before, and tell them everything in order. Don't tell the ending until the very last thing. We start prompting them too for making connections, making predictions. What do you think could happen next in this story? At the end, the sun was shining. Where do you think she went with her dad after that? And we're looking for kind of reasonable connections there. Who's kind of using the story events. If the story was about raining and then it became sunny and there was a rainbow, we don't want them to say that next they're probably going to go look at dinosaurs, because that would be unrelated to the story. They also are going to continue working on letter sounds and patterns here, starting to learn common word endings and digraphs, SH, TH, CH, ing, the ED, and S's. Again, starting to read in even longer phrases. And here's where we kind of start noticing word patterns or word families that used to be called within text. So if you see at like as a chunk in there, or in, or it, are you able to recognize that when it's in a word and kind of use that for problem solving? All right, so now that you kind of have a general overview of these text levels, people often wonder what happens next. So you guys got report cards. On there, it doesn't give too much detailed information. It's just kind of in categories, how Dearborn does that. But what you can do is keep reading books from your child's book bag, practice those sight word cards that are in the book bag and the ABC chart. Most of us have virtual book bags on Benchmark also. So if you have not logged into Schoology at all this year, I strongly encourage you to do that as soon as possible. In the event of any virtual days, and of course for March 1st that we now know is going to be virtual. Make sure that you're logged in, as your child is connected. You cannot access like Benchmark and things like that from the parent app for Schoology. You actually have to be logged in as your child. Feel free to ask your child questions when they're reading. Maybe don't jump to tell them the word right away, kind of watch and see what they're doing with their problem solving. Are they looking at the word? Are they looking at the picture? When you're done reading at night, practice retelling. Who are the characters? What was going on? What did this story remind you of? And I would say probably one of the biggest challenges we've had this year has been in the area of writing. The last somewhat normal time these kids had, they were maybe 2.5, between 2 and 3 years old. So a lot of them didn't get the preschool experience with dexterity and coloring and writing and the things that they may have had in previous years. So definitely writing, anytime you guys can write or color, that is a wonderful thing to do. I have a lot of students this year who are fantastic at reading sight words. I have kids that know nearly 100 words by reading them to me at this point, which is phenomenal. But what I'm finding is that even though they can read me these words in a story, they're not making any sense of them. So I've had to scale kids back quite a bit in their levels, not because of the accuracy of the words, but because they're not able to understand the story. And we're not going to keep moving forward just to do more and more difficult words if we're not making sense of the story. We have to understand what the story is telling us. We have to understand the characters, the setting, the details, and be able to answer questions about those stories. Now, because I can't see my screen very well, I'm going to stop the share because that was a lot of information. And I'm just going to see how you guys are doing. How you doing so far? We hanging in there okay? Any questions so far about the levels? If you want to know your child's specific level, kind of where they are, just shoot your teacher an email, and they'll tell you exactly. Because I don't think that printed on the report cards this year.
I didn't see that on there. That was
You
gonna be
didn't?
one-
Okay. In years past it has, but I can't remember. I don't remember like filling that out this year to be able to do that. All right. Now, sorry. Probably isn't real great to be drinking caffeine at 7:45 at night, but let's talk next about DIRIPs. Okay, so DIRIP is just a big acronym for, I think it's Dearborn Individualized Reading Improvement Plan. Okay, and what that means is that we basically have one kind of standardized test that we use in elementary in Dearborn. It's called the NWEA. I actually tested all of the kindergartners this first round on NWEA, because we kind of went through, it was honestly just for consistency's purposes. I was the one who, I have a lot of experience giving this test. And so I just kind of gave it in small groups, and I thought it would just be easier since we had a little run of some teachers being sick throughout the building. So I had the kids in my room in small groups of three-ish. I don't think I had any groups. It was either 2 or 3. I don't even think I did any groups of 4. And if you're not familiar with this testing format, I'll tell you in the ELA, I think it's 43 questions in the ELA. It takes them anywhere, if they're super zooming through, maybe 10 minutes to, some kids took close to 50 to take the test. As the child is kind of answering the questions, the test will kind of tweak itself because it wants to kind of know what's like the maximum where we start getting a lot of wrong guesses or wrong answers, I should say, on a typical topic. At our age, the test is read out loud to them. Okay, so everything that's on there is being read to them. The switch to reading it on your own doesn't happen until they hit 2nd grade. One of the things I made sure to go over with all the kids is that anytime you see the little speaker icon, and I showed it to them, I had them practice with it on the initial test screen. Anytime you see that speaker, you touch it and it's going to read out loud to you. That being said, with the environment not being one-on-one with headphones off, where I can kind of hear who's completing the question and who's not, I can only hear like muffled through headphones. I will tell you that some of the kids did not test very well. I'll also say that is not atypical. Okay, it's the first time they're doing something like this. It's 43 questions. That's, none of it is fun per se. They're not getting the same feedback like they would with some of our other learning games. I would not say that I guess I'll just say that watching them test and having them experience the test is a great learning opportunity, because it actually showed me a lot about them as learners, and it's their first run, okay, at this test. So expect scores to only go up. I'm trying to think. Oh, there were kids, I do want to say, who were answering the questions and it was still being read to them because I could hear it. And they're trying to tap the screen like it's a video game. So again, it's all like a learning curve, right? So even though I kept saying, okay, it's still talking, you can't answer yet, they would click, next, So with it being their age, I think the scores were fairly typical, especially being in a pandemic. So how the DIRIPs work is that if your child scored below the 50th percentile on this NWEA, you more than likely will be receiving a DIRIP. Okay. Now, I don't want anybody to panic. The DIREPs, especially at their age, I will say lots of them are given out. Okay. We do continue to use that measure, NWEA, because it's really the only standard measure that we have for the kindergarten. But if you receive a DIREP, it shows that score and it shows scores on all of the in-class assessments we've done. So, you know, their reading level that I just tested them at, how many letters, sight words, and things that they know. So I'm going to go ahead and pull back up my screen here and kind of show you. All right, so this is just a sample, not even from our school, but this is kind of what it has looked like in years past. I don't know if they have changed any of it, like the format of it for this school year. I actually tried to run some of mine today and the link from assessment wasn't working. So again, your student is going to be automatically generated this when they score below the 50th percentile on that NWEA, okay? This is because Michigan still has the read by third grade law. It makes sure that as teachers and staff, we are communicating to you that your child scored below the 50th percentile, okay, on that one test. It also shows on here, as you can see, how they scored in many other areas. Okay, so that top one there, you know, in the box here that says NWEA, okay, there's what's called their RIT score. So that was that 3-digit score. This shows a fall and a winter. Now we didn't give the NWEA in fall, we did something different. And then you're going to see a column for spring scores as well. Okay, all of these other ones, except maybe the CAP, will be on there. These to me are probably the most important of the scores because that's what we're looking at daily in class. We're looking for progress and growth on letters, sounds, and most certainly the text level. And if you take a look here, this particular student was generated an NWEA, I'm sorry, a DIREP from the NWEA. But if you look here, they started at a text level 0, very common. They're reading winter at a level 2. That's actually grade level for kindergarten. They had 2 sight words in the fall. They have 14 out of 20 in the winter. We're looking for 20 out of 20 in spring. Okay, and then also you'll kind of see in the plan here, boxes may or may not be checked based on the things that the teacher is going to agree to provide to kind of make sure that we close this gap. I mentioned that a lot of the kids were answering questions while the test was still reading to them. If that was a student in another class, I did communicate that to their teacher. Because again, that's a learning point. That's a teaching point for us. You know, are we listening to a direction all the way before we're acting on it? Are we listening to a story all the way before we're doing the work or answering the questions? As far as parent support, that'll be your boxes in there to check. And then there's a spot here for the student commitment, but that of course is mostly for the upper L kids. I usually just ask the kids, oh, you're going to do your classwork with me, right? And you're going to remember to do your homework. And they say yes, and we call it a day. So we will ask you to sign that and date it. Okay, now I know this can cause a lot of stress and anxiety for the families. It's not meant to do that. Okay, so if your child gets a DIREP, I said, first of all, don't panic. This is not a panic situation. Again, this is our requirement by law to communicate this information to you. Does this mean your child's going to do kindergarten again next year? Or if they're in young fives, they're going to need another year of young fives? Absolutely not. Okay, just because this report is generated does not mean that your child is going to repeat the current grade that they're in, and that goes K5. So if you have another student in another grade, just remember, it does not mean they're going to repeat that grade. We take in so many factors when it comes to making the recommendation for a child to be retained in a grade. And more than likely that conversation would have already been started with you by your child's teacher. Just a little blurb on here about interventions. Now, does it mean that your child's going to see extra teachers or get extra interventions because they have this DIREP? No, not necessarily. This does not mean that they're going to be referred for special education. It does not mean that they're going to get services from our interventionist. It simply means that we are communicating to you. We're going to provide effective practice for you using best practices. And we're going to make sure that we kind of close that gap where we can. How are we doing now? I am hitting you with a lot of information.
How frequently are they tested? So it looked like fall, winter, and then are they tested again in the spring?
Yep. So formally, we do, it's basically September, January, and May. Yep. And then of course, in the classroom, we're doing things that aren't as formal, more of kind of informal assessments, taking notes, those types of things. But those 3 times are the formal assessments required by the district. Any questions about those DIRIPs? Again, I don't want anybody to panic. Some people in the past have said, well, I'm not going to sign it. Okay, that's fine. Do you have to sign it? No. But it doesn't change the fact that the DIRIP is still going to go into effect. Because again, it's a communication tool. So if you choose to not sign it, then we will just write right on there, the date that we communicated the information, which will either be today or by a phone call if you're not here today. And that will still get filed. The DIRIP still goes into effect, meaning that your teacher is still going to provide all of those things for your child. And then we just file it. And if you receive one, those the extra services, that the teacher is going to be providing. I don't want to say extra because really these are just like common classroom practices. But that will stay in effect through the school year. And then next fall, things kind of start all over again with the DIRIP.
When would we receive the DIRIP?
We're trying to get them out this week. So when I went to start printing them today, I got an error, which was very bizarre. So I actually had to have Miss Tiba call over to the assessment office, and they said they were going to have to try to fix the link. So for my class, if they're up and running, I should be able to send them by Wednesday. For the rest of the classes, I'm guessing it'll be by Friday.
Because this year is the first time I've ever saw, I have a 5th grader and a 1st grader there too.
Mhm.
It's not my first rodeo, but his NWEA looked totally different than I've ever saw compared to my other kids. It didn't have the bar graph. Instead, it was, doot, 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 So I didn't
Gotcha.
quite understand it
Okay.
compared to what I've saw before. I know he's been doing great, which is crazy. Girl, I got 3 kids, got a bunch. And that 3rd one, it's like, what? Oh, wow. He surprised me and he's doing wonderful, but I'm having a hard time reading it. So I don't know if he's going to receive that or not. And that's just a concern of mine. That's all.
Yep. And I'll say, I'm trying to think of what the 50th percentile score was this year. It was a 141 or 2, I want to say.
All right.
For sure, if your child got anything in the 130s, they'll be getting a DIRIP. And I want to say it was maybe like 142 and below. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check that number.
I don't think that applies to him because he's blowing my mind, but thank you.
Okay.
All
Yeah.
right,
And you know
you're
what?
doing good.
So as your child takes the tests every year, it does kind of keep like a running graph of their progress, which is nice. So in kindergarten, you won't see much of that. Or young 5s, if you're a young 5 family on here. But you'll start seeing trends over time, which is kind of nice. So yeah, the older your kids are, the more trends you'll see.
It was more of a
was it like a line graph with a
yes, it was a
yeah,
line
and I
graph,
think
not a
that's
bar
because
graph
there just
like
aren't
I'm
many
used to.
scores.
So it was just different from what I used to seeing. That's all.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Any questions? I like to kind of talk in general about the DIRIPs with everybody, just because, we do kind of issue a lot. It's the nature of, their age and how they test and the fact that they've never done this before. And we don't have our own Chrome carts, in the classroom. So it's not like we have them on computers every day, able to practice some of these skills. And some of it is just navigating the test and navigating kind of the touchscreen Chromebook. And if kids don't have experience with that, it's very stressful, and you don't get a score that's necessarily an indicator of their academic performance. So any other questions? Gonna look
I have a quick question
Sure.
about the percentile.
Uh-huh.
Is that all the kindergarten classes together or each class's percentile?
So when the report generates a percentile, the bar graph style that Mrs. Mayor Tet mentioned will show you where the kids performed in the district, the nation, and then just themselves. So it doesn't, there's no class level comparison there. I think the parent reports I printed for you guys does the national comparison. I don't have them in front of me. Does anybody see, is there a district line in that line graph? If anybody's got one out in front of
It's
them.
just the national.
Just the national, okay. Yeah, and if you want to know where kind of the kids in the district scored, because some people do like to know that, we're happy to share that with you too.
Thank
I
you.
have more reports than you could possibly want to have. Any other questions?
I would like to see the bar graph of Dean's
Yeah, sure.
work. If Miss N can provide that for me
Yep,
sometime this week.
absolutely.
Because
sure.
I like to see where he falls in all the categories.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you so
If
much.
you just
Yeah.
remind me, just send me a little note in his folder or something, or grab me. And
Not a problem.
I'll have
Absolutely.
Miss Mustin show me how to pull up those reports.
Okay.
You
That's
got
cool.
This is new.
Thank you.
for me. It's a fun learning curve. I'm like the kindergartners clicking on the thing.
I know, and that's
Not
why I
listening to
just
all
know
the directions.
you've been through all that stuff. I didn't bother you or send your, I know how it is to have a migraine, and I wouldn't want to read text messages for parents, but you've been in our thoughts and prayers.
Thank you guys so much. The kids were so sweet today. I felt very, very loved.
Yes, he was very happy to see you again.
I was very happy to be back. So thank you
That's
so
great.
much. I
You're
felt very, very
welcome.
loved.
That's awesome.
And again, if you have any more specific questions, I mean, you can, since I was kind of the proctor of the test, if you want to know, if your child had any specific behaviors or any red flags that I noticed as far as like the computer portion of it,
Love to
shoot me
know
an
that
email.
one.
It's just mustingk@dearbornschools.org.
I'll send you an email, Miss Mustin, because
Yeah, you
I'd
got
love
it.
to know.
Or Mustonk, because everybody likes to joke, MUSTONK.
Oh, well,
And I can answer
What?
that side of the questions for you.
Okay.
And I'm trying to think anything else. Let me just make sure, check my slides. Yeah, we're just to a Q&A. If you have questions about report cards, things like that, please reach out to one of us and let us know. We will be doing this NWEA again in the spring. The window opens again in May. They will have what is called a growth goal that's set by NWEA. It's based on their current score. That's an average of maybe 10 to 12 points that we kind of look for them to go up and meet their growth goal. And some of them go up 30 points because now they know how to work the Chromebook. So you'll be pleasantly surprised at how some of those scores go up. So thank you guys so much for hopping on the Zoom with us tonight. And we appreciate you so much. Don't forget pajamas on backwards, flush ice cubes down the toilet. What's the other things for a snow day? Your a spoon under your pillow. I'm going to tell the kids all these things so that we can do them for Wednesday and Thursday. And Friday, my son just shouted, he's back. All right, thank you guys so much. Enjoy your night and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye,
You
you're
too.
welcome.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye. See you.
Bye. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.